everyone, welcome to 10-Minute Physiology. In today's video, we're going to talk about the peripheral nervous system. So with that, let's give it a go. So I would like to begin by first talking about the four main purposes or roles of the peripheral nervous system. So the peripheral nervous system has four main roles. The first role is that the peripheral nervous system is going to transduce physical and chemical stimuli from the environment and body into sensory information. The second role is that the peripheral nervous system conveys sensory information to the central nervous system. The third role is that the peripheral nervous system conveys motor signals from the central nervous system to targets. And then the last role is that the peripheral nervous system is going to convert motor signals to chemical signals in the periphery. So these are the four main roles of the peripheral nervous system. So now what I would like to do is look at the different divisions of the peripheral nervous system. And the peripheral nervous system can be divided into two main branches. The first branch is going to be the somatic division. So the somatic division of the peripheral nervous system is going to include the sensory neurons and axons that innervate the skin, muscle, and joints. And it's also going to include the motor axons that innervate skeletal muscle. This division is going to be responsible for collecting information from the environment or interacting with the environment through voluntary actions. The second branch of the peripheral nervous system is the autonomic division. This is going to include the motor and sensory axons that innervate smooth muscle, exocrine glands, and other viscera. And this division of the peripheral nervous system is primarily going to deal with the body's internal environment. Now, it's important to note that the autonomic nervous system comprises parts from both the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So those are the divisions of the peripheral nervous system. So now that we know the different divisions, let's now talk about the general anatomy of the peripheral nerves. So this right here is a simplified figure of a peripheral nerve. And what we see with peripheral nerves is that these peripheral nerves are going to be surrounded by connective tissue. And this connective tissue is called the epineurium. Now, peripheral nerves are also going to have blood vessels inside them. These blood vessels will provide the neurons with nutrients and oxygen and other important substances for these neurons to survive. Now, inside the nerves, what we see is that we have these bundles of axons called fascicles. And these fascicles are represented by these red circles with blue circles in them in this figure. Now, these fascicles are going to have connective tissue. The outer layer of connective tissue that surrounds each fascicle is called the perineurium, and the connective tissue inside the fascicles are going to be called the endoneurium. Now, like we said, inside these fascicles, we have these axons that are bundled together, and these axons can either be myelinated or unmyelinated. So this right here is a figure of a myelinated axon where we see the axon surrounded by Schwann cells. Now, we can also have unmyelinated axons, which are shown here. These unmyelinated axons also associate with Schwann cells. However, the Schwann cells do not overlap the entire axon. So these are unmyelinated axons, these green rods here. So this is basically the general anatomy of peripheral nerves in the peripheral nervous system. So now let's talk about some other facts of general anatomy of the peripheral nervous system. So nervous tissue in the peripheral nervous system is generally going to be tougher than the nervous tissue found in the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is also mechanically flexible, tolerant to minor trauma, and has a blood supply that is less dependable than that for the CNS. And in addition, unmyelinated axons outnumber myelinated axons by about 2 to 1. So the last thing that I would like to look at is this diagram here. So this diagram shows a very simplified view of the spinal cord without any of the dura, arachnoid, or pia mater surrounding it. So let's take a look at the different parts of this diagram here. So the first thing that we see here is a mixed spinal nerve. So a mixed spinal nerve means that you have axons that are carrying information into the central nervous system and axons that are carrying information away from the central nervous system bundled together. Now, what we see here is that this mixed spinal nerve is going to divide into two segments. The first segment is going to be the dorsal root ganglion, and the dorsal root ganglion is going to be responsible for taking information from the body and bringing it into the central nervous system. So the dorsal root ganglion is going to divide into dorsal root filaments, and then the dorsal root filaments will enter into the spinal cord through this entry zone behind the spinal cord. So in addition to the dorsal part, we also have the ventral root filaments. So the ventral root filaments are going to take information from the central nervous system and bring it into the periphery. So these ventral root filaments will all come together to form the ventral root right here and then go into the mixed spinal nerve. Now it's important to note that root sleeves cover the mixed nerves and dorsal and ventral roots, and that the sleeves are made up of 3 layers: dura, arachnoid, and pia mater. So that's it for this video. I hope this video helped you understand some general concepts of the peripheral nervous system, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.